in verse 7, it says about 3 hours later. Now, I don't know where Sapphira had been for 3 hours, and I don't know how fast, word traveled back in the first century, but she's stepping into a bad situation.
Yeah.
So verse 7, about 3 hours later, his wife came in, not knowing what had happened. And here we go again. All right? Peter asked Sapphira, tell me, Sapphira, is this the price that you and Ananias got for the land? Now, we adults ask teenagers questions that we already know the answer to, right? And I've been asked questions as an adult myself, and I know that the person asking me the question already knows the answer. They're just trying to figure out if I'm going to tell them the story or not. They know the answer to the question they're asking. They're not trying to find the answer to the question I'm asking. They're trying to find the answer to, is Brad going to be honest with me? That's what they're after. And that's, in a small way, is kind of what's going on here. Peter asked Sapphira, is this the price that you and Ananias got for the land? Now, what is that but the same second chance that Peter gave to Ananias a few minutes earlier, a few hours earlier? And so here's Peter, and he says, tell me, is this the price? There in verse 7? And yeah, verse 8. Is this the price that you and Ananias got for the land? All right. And now, I don't know what she was thinking. I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking, like when she came into the room, I wonder if how did she not know that something was wrong? I'm not trying to. So exegesis is letting the scripture say what it wants to say. Eisegesis is imposing on scripture something that you want it to say. I'm not trying to impose anything on scripture here. I'm just saying, I'm thinking about the atmosphere. When Sapphira walked back into the room, I just wonder, because it says that fear came upon everybody. I just wonder if when she walked into the room, if everybody didn't go, right?
Yeah, I mean, she walking into a bad spot. So.
And I mean, like, who's gonna say something? Who's gonna run up and tap her on the shoulder? Sapphira, you better stay. You better speak the truth, girl. Maybe there was some tension in the air. I don't know if she said, "Hey, where's Ananias? Has anybody seen Ananias? Where's my husband?" None of that is there. It makes for good preaching, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it also makes for good conversation and maybe some application for ourselves. We don't need somebody else to tell us what the truth is. We have a conscience that God gave us. And neither Ananias or Sapphira was listening to their conscience.
Yeah.
And so 3 hours later, she comes in, and Sapphira, is this the price that you and your husband gave for the land? She had her chance there to listen to her conscience. She could have said, it's really not. I got some more back at the house. There is more. Can I go get it? Boom, she had been off the hook. She would have been being honest. She didn't do that. And she said, yes, it is. That's the price. In verse 9, Peter said to her, how could you agree to test the Spirit of the living God? Look, the feet of the men who buried your husband are at the door, and they're going to carry you out too.
Man.
And that's just, they don't get no more powerful than that. And then verse 10, at that moment she fell down at his feet and died. And the young men came in and, finding her dead, carried her out and buried her outside beside her husband. And now here in verse 11 is the conclusion statement to all this. Great fear seized the whole church and all who heard about these events. Well, I guess so. I mean, don't you know? Everybody's checking their motives. Everybody's checking their motives now. All right? So here was Ananias in verse 8 with another chance to be honest and transparent and not lie. And she missed it. So verse 11, you know, we're always looking for the author's original intent and the context. Verse 11 is the conclusion statement to this story. Verse 11 is the author's original intent. When Luke wrote this story about Ananias and Sapphira, him being a doctor, he's a medical doctor, but his conclusion, what he wanted Brad and David and Rashawn and Alan, what he wants us to know in the 21st century when we read this story, is that great fear seized the whole church and all who heard about these events. They realized this is not the Pharisees' church. What we're seeing is not regular church, regular synagogue activity. Just like the dead people that burst out of the graves in Matthew 27, right? This is not regular stuff. Just like the darkness that fell over the land during the crucifixion, this is not regular stuff. Even the religious priests who went into the temple and then they saw that the veil, a thick curtain, the veil in the temple was torn from the top. Nobody tears thick cloth from the top. Even the religious priests, they saw that this is not regular stuff. And so here we are, 40 days later and Pentecost and everything, and people are still being awakened to the truth and the reality that Jesus was the Son of God. When he said, destroy this temple, I'll raise it in 3 days. They didn't have any trouble believing that anymore, because even now, a few days, weeks or so, or after that, there's still eyes being opened and ears being able to hear